Hello! We have 4 stories of deliciously petty malicious compliance. Our first features an entitled airplane passenger who gets busted trying to get something for nothing. As always, your support helps fight the Reddit bot menace. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. We start with Story 1. Fake Vegetarian on Flight. Okay, so just to preface this, I'm a cabin crew member, flight attendant. I've been doing it for over 10 years. Any issues that crop up during my workday, I will bend over backwards to accommodate people if I can. However, there are unfortunately a handful of people that are dishonest to try and get what they want. Fake injuries to try and get upgraded, fake birthdays, you name it, people have tried it. Believe you me, I've had loads of scenarios where people try to cheat the system because it makes them feel special, or that they have one-upped me, I guess. Let me tell you about a fake vegetarian I had on board. He was flying in economy, coach, in the second from last row. He wanted the pasta option. I apologized and told him due to popular demand we had ran out in the middle of the cabin, but we had the chicken option instead if he wanted that. Without skipping a beat, he said, "I'm a vegetarian. Last time they brought me a meal from business class, so I will just wait for that." Now, this is something I would have offered anyway as a nicety if available, as I'm not too much of a jerk and I genuinely like helping people out if I can. After all, it's a 747, not a 7-Eleven, as the saying goes. Anyway, the way he just expected it right off the bat before I could even offer a solution left a slightly bad taste in my mouth. And also, I smelled a rat. I was 99% sure that I had cleared an empty packet of Smokey Bacon crisps from him earlier on, and no, they weren't a veggie brand as I have the same ones occasionally. I was certain that he was being picky and wanted a higher quality meal. Plus, any regular would know how often we run out of the veggie option and to pre-order a veggie meal. I said, "It's unfortunate that you didn't pre-order a vegetarian meal. I will see what I can do for you though. Just give me 5 minutes to finish up here." Anyway, I went up to business class. They had also run out of the veggie option. So I went up to first class and asked if they could spare anything. We ended up putting a few leaves together with a bit of dressing. They spend thousands of pounds more up there and can dine at any time. So they didn't want me taking any of the hot veggie options in case someone wanted it later. Fair enough. Then I thought, I could probably have some fun with this fake vegetarian. Cue malicious compliance. I brought it back down on a silver tray and held it above his eyeline so he couldn't see what it was. I explained that unfortunately the vegetarian business class option had run out. Then he went to cut me off so he could complain, but I held up my hand and said, "However, I managed to go one step further and I got the last vegetarian meal from first class." Then I pulled the linen cloth off the top of the tray as I placed the salad down in front of him. It really was a very basic but large salad, and his face said it all. His face went from a smug, "Haha, I work the system," to "WTF is that?" within 2 to 3 seconds flat. He then said, "I wanted something hot. I'll just have the chicken then." I put on a shocked face and said, "I cannot give you that, sir. I would feel awful." He responded with, "Don't worry about it. It's fine." I gave him an, "Are you sure you're vegetarian?" look, and brought back the chicken, by which point it had been sat drying up in the oven a little bit longer. Bon appetit! In the comments, Nubostrone said, "I had a coworker who traveled over 100,000 miles a year. He knew which meals on which airlines were best and would pre-order them. Apparently the kosher option is pretty good." OP replied, "He is right, 100%. I definitely recommend the kosher option. You get more stuff usually too." The Turtle Game added, "I keep kosher and let me tell ya, kosher airplane is almost always awful. If it's better than the non-kosher food, then the normal meals must be horrendous." Himitsumono confirmed, "They are." Otterboro said, "I pre-ordered the vegetarian meal once. It was a plate of iceberg lettuce with a packet of dressing." Seiko Blue replied, "Excuse me, sir, that's called a wedge salad up in first class? Have some respect." OP has to be one of the nicest people ever. She did all this extra work and went out of her way to really show this guy, and in the end, he pretty much got what he wanted, except his meal was a little cold, and she's like, "Haha, I showed him." I think I would have just said, "Sorry, we don't have a veggie chicken option," and walked away. Our second story heads into the boardroom and proves to you that even lawyers sometimes forget to read the fine print. In story 2, retiring lawyer spills his beans. This all from memory based on the ramblings of a drunk, retiring lawyer about 30 years ago. So I started work in the 90s on the shop floor of a pipe making factory, but made a few friends in the office. So one year, at our end-of-year breakup party, I overheard a story from the corporate lawyer who was retiring on the same day. Someone asked what his most memorable case was. This guy was gray. Gray hair, gray skin, gray clothing, gray manners. Nothing distinctive about him at all. In fact, at the annual company party known for drinking, this guy was always sober, but not that night. He was a contracts lawyer, never tried a case, just proved contracts all day, as far as I know. He's probably dead by now, along with most people in this story, but no company names as those entities live forever. So we made pipe, plastic pipe, water supply, sewer, electrical, and telecommunications duct. We were the second biggest in the market and would swap contracts with the biggest manufacturer as we both bid on supplying the big players in the markets. In our jurisdiction, we had a government communication department, which got sold off and became Big Telco, along with deregulation of the sector. We supplied green ducting for telecommunications to Big Telco, lost the contract to the competition, gained it back, etc. Life went on. One day, a new international company entered our market and started undercutting Big Telco. Let's call them OK Telco. So as things go, we lost the Big Telco contract, but picked up the OK Telco contract, which was bigger, as they had to establish an entire network from scratch. Yay us! This is where Mr. Gray enters the story. He was a contracts lawyer, not a criminal law or other specialty, but contract. He gets a please attend meeting invite from Big Telco along with a select few from our company, probably about the upcoming renegotiating of contracts. When Mr. Gray walks into the room with his boss, there sitting across the boardroom table are Mr. Big Shot and several $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyers. They ambush them with an injunction about using this green, the standard telecommunications green, for OK Telco pipes. They're ready to take them for everything, including the pension fund for daring to supply the competition. They had a strict contract on the table, which had to be signed then and there. Or another $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyer standing by at the courthouse would have a judge sign an injunction against making any pipe at all until the case was settled. Probably an empty threat, but even a 2-week break in production could kill our company while lawyers cleared it with the judge to let us make other types of pipe. Mr. Gray looked over the contract and told the boss to sign as they could tie us up in knots due to their huge size and budget. The contract just made it clear that this green was the exclusive property of Big Telco and could only make it for Big Telco. We folded like a shirt and signed. Life went on with us making OK Telco that green pipe. A few months later, Mr. Gray went to a 20-year reunion from his law school. Guess who was there? Mr. Big Shot, telling everyone about how great a lawyer he is and how he can push around anyone due to how great he is, and definitely not due to his huge budget and army of $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyers. Mr. Gray is fuming. Mr. Gray bides his time and pores over the contract. A few years later, Big Telco has to have a name change due to how much bad press they have from shifty service and practices, and as a way to avoid debts under the old name. They change everything, storefronts, letterheads, everything. They are now New Old Telco. Contracts come and go. The other big pipe company gets the contract from New Old Telco to make pipe. Mr. Gray strikes. Other pipe company and New Old Telco get served with cease and desist orders about making and using green pipe. Big Shot lawyer is puzzled and angry that this has happened and calls Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray arranges a meeting and then hangs up on Big Shot mid-threat. Big Shot turns up with his $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyers to see just Mr. Gray in the boardroom. No ambush, no backup, just him. Mr. Gray lets him vent his spleen about how they're going to gut the company and Mr. Gray will never work in law again. Then Mr. Gray takes out a packet of papers and a highlighter, makes a few strokes, and pushes it to the closest $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyer. They read what he had highlighted and screwed up their face. This was repeated as the papers were passed to the Big Shot lawyer. I'm no lawyer, and this was about 30 years ago, so I can only paraphrase what Mr. Gray said he had highlighted. Only our pipe co, in conjunction with Big Telco, can make and or use this green pipe. Exclusively with no substitutes, parent or child companies, successors, or blah blah blah. Since there were only 2 companies listed on the contract, they were the only 2 sets of people who could decide the fate of this green pipe. Big Shot said that they could claim ownership of the pipe colors since they were in effect just a rebranded Big Telco. Mr. Gray pointed out that admission would cause all their voided debts to come home with the interest along with an admission of guilt in trying to pervert the course of justice. Big Shot then claimed that they inherited the ownership. Mr. Gray cut him off with the no child company clause. Big Shot went on for a while, being blocked by Mr. Gray at every turn. And at the end, even his $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyers were jumping in to shut him down because he was exposing them to risks greater than any of them were willing to be a part of, especially since they had made the contract as airtight as they could to screw us. As they were leaving, Mr. Gray said two things. This was an unfair fight. All of you versus me. Next time, bring more and smarter lawyers. And since we now effectively control the this green, here's a document making the color public domain. We don't want to screw the other pipe company. It's not their fault that they have idiots for customers. In the comments, a wild thread of funny lawyer jokes appeared. Madrugada Eterna said, $5 a word flesh-eating attack lawyers, what a wonderful phrase. Dexon replied, why don't sharks eat lawyers? Professional courtesy. Rottenweiler added, difference between a dead skunk on the road and a dead lawyer on the road? Skid marks leading up to the skunk. Pimento Cheesehead said, what happens when a lawyer takes Viagra? They get taller. In this story, the highlighter was mightier than the pen and the sword. Mr. Gray cut them down off their high horses with a stroke of that highlighter and reminded them that the devil is always in the detail. Our third story has a young man getting the runaround when he agrees to temporarily take on extra duties at work. That is until it becomes clear management are dragging their feet. Story 3. Deal with it or find a new job? Easier than you think, bub. As a young adult, I decided to move several hundred miles away on a whim, without a new job lined up. Fortunately, the relatives I was living with knew a ton of people in the small town and were able to get me a job within a week at the local grocery store. I was to be a courtesy clerk, bagging groceries and stocking shelves. Immediately, I made friends with coworkers, and some of the customers weren't too bad either. However, management was a different deal, like the HR manager who would waste a customer's time telling them recipes for the items they have and holding up the line. She would also call me from the back of the store to bag 2 items and help the man barely older than me to his car, despite him protesting. There was also John, the general manager. John would be nice in groups, but if he got you alone, his true colors would show. He once berated me for having a 5 o'clock shadow even though I shaved right before work. My hair is dark and grows quickly. Sorry, dude, can't help nature. After a few months, the night janitor, technically early morning, quit. John decided it would now be my job to polish the floors every morning. My previous job was at a movie theater, so working from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. was normal. Mornings? Not my jam. This would require me to be at work by 4 a.m., but I was told this would be for 1 to 2 months tops. I was even thrown a sweet 5-cent raise for my troubles. How could I decline? After a month, I asked John how the search for a replacement is going. He says probably 2 weeks and everything will be settled. After month 2, I ask again. John says the first person fell through and suggests that maybe I know someone who might be looking for a job. I assure him that is not the case. After the 3rd month, I was completely over it. Again, I approached John and explained that I cannot keep doing this much longer. He replies, not my problem, find someone else or a new job. This pissed me off, but I wasn't in the position to walk out right then. I figured I'd start applying anywhere I could. A couple of days later, possibly even the same day, my relative drags me with them to go look at new cars. While discussing prices and waiting for the sales manager to respond, my relative and the salesperson were just BSing, and I mentioned what John had told me about the job. The salesperson raised an eyebrow and walked away. Moments later, the sales manager approached and said they were looking for a detailer and asked if I was interested. It would be a regular schedule, no evenings, and higher than even my previous theater job as a manager. While my relative was signing financing paperwork, I was filling out a new hire packet. I was to begin work on Tuesday of the next week. When I got home, I packed a bag and began driving to my hometown to visit friends. I knew I wouldn't have to work for about a week because at midnight, I called the grocery store and told them I would not be returning to work. If you have any questions, please ask John. Epilogue. A year or so after my departure, John was mysteriously no longer working at the store. Nobody knew why, as he had another 5 years before retirement. One day, I had to go to the bank to deposit a check and John was the teller. It was so fun to watch him deposit my paycheck from my new employer. In the comments, YOLO Swag said, Your mistake was doing a good job at polishing the floor. OP replied, my best friend and I had a conversation about that after we got our first jobs. He asked, you ever notice how being good at your job means getting more responsibility, but you're still paid the same as people that slack off? Epiphany moment for me. The grocery store was my second job and I still hadn't learned the skill to say no. Rambo Bright said, not my problem, says the person whose problem it absolutely was. Well done. Reddit admin R Moron said, yeah, never tell someone that the item in question that is your literal job is not your problem. It will never end well. Dembo3K replied, I mean, it probably ended well plenty of times, where the other person would just give up complaining and do whatever it was. The problem is that every time he did it, he was rolling the dice, until it finally came up wrong. Ancient End added, snake eyes for the win. Where is this magical place that jobs just land right in your lap? I mean, yeah, the grocery store sounded a bit crappy, but seriously, must be a small town thing. Our fourth story has one man finding an unlikely ally when a parking mishap leads to an unjust ticket that they just refuse to let slide. In story 4, give me a parking ticket for a spot I paid for. I dare you. About 10 or so years ago, I went to a concert an hour away from me in Indianapolis. Decided to make a day of it, going to several museums and spots around the city, each time paying for parking in a garage for 2 or so hours, then going to meander around the area. Finally, I go park close to the venue and paid for parking until the time it was free. In total, I probably paid $40 to $50 for parking throughout the day. Enjoyed the concert, but come back to a parking ticket on my car. I think, this is odd, but I am tired and chalk it up to a mistake. But I decide to take photos of my parking spot. Both spots on either sides were taken, and all the signage, and head home for the evening, figuring I would sort it in the morning. The next morning, I reviewed the ticket, the photo of my spot, and my parking receipt. The ticket did not line up to the spot my car was located in, and my receipt shows that I had valid parking at the time of the ticket. So I submit an appeal thinking this will be easy. It's obvious that a mistake was made. The appeal was denied. The ticket was for the spot that was not paid for, ergo, it stood. I called the office, and the lady said they did not make a mistake as my receipt showed that I paid for spot X1 and the ticket was for spot X. I asked about the photo proof that my car was in spot X1. She said, well, you could have moved the car. Note that the parking receipt included my license plate number and everything. Think Park Mobile-like system. I noted that there were cars and spots on either side of me and that the entire street was full because of the concert. And honestly, I don't think they bothered to look at the photo. Even had that not been the case, I had proof that the license plate had a paid parking spot. No matter what, no dice. I am feeling petty over this $25 parking ticket at this point. So I called Visa and asked if I could retract the amount I paid for the time that I had parked since it didn't count. I submitted all the evidence and documentation to Visa. Visa, in what was the greatest thing Visa has ever done in my opinion, they agreed that if my parking receipt and transaction number wasn't proof I paid for parking, then clearly I had paid for a service I did not receive. And they extended my initial request of canceling the one transaction to include all the parking spots I had paid for through the system that day, valued at more than the parking ticket. Then they filed a formal complaint on my behalf with a letter explaining why they were refunding me. It would not have been nearly as satisfying if I had not spent the entire day playing tourist in the city and racking up a large parking bill all with the same vendor. In the comments, Groenwolf said, fun fact, if Visa has to do a chargeback, they will tack on a $40 fee on top of the refund. So not only did they lose $50 for the parking, they may have also lost 40 times the number of payments. OP replied, I love this even more. That makes this even better. Halo Spite said, someone at Visa woke up and chose violence. Beautiful. Parking is one of the things that I least like paying for. In fact, I will frequently walk further if it means free parking. That's how much I hate it. And on the Visa thing, can confirm they will go a bit all or nothing with the reversals. I once sought a refund for a double charge after the service provider refused to provide a refund, for which I also had proof. And the credit card company reversed everything. It was all free. It's like they were on a mission to teach someone a lesson. Positively delightful. And that's it for today. Until next time, shine bright, Starlight. Yahoo! If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.